Alina's in charge for you who don't know. I'm Howard Axel. I'm the CEO of the Four Freedoms Park Conservancy. We program this spectacular site, one of the great architectural masterpieces in New York City, which is important, and we'll talk about that. But you will all talk about that in a much more eloquent way than I can ever, as Nathaniel knows. However, I do want to just talk about the FDR piece and the Four Freedoms. So what we do here is try to get people to this spectacular sanctuary in the middle of New York City. I don't think Louis Kahn thought of this as the middle of New York City when he was building it, but look at Queens now. It blocks all the light from our room, so not a fan. But I was born in Brooklyn, so that's how it goes. Four Freedoms. Can anyone give me any of the freedoms? 1941, we're not in World War II yet. Every country in Europe is overwhelmed. The only country left is the UK. And Roosevelt talked about the US needing to get into World War II in order to bring four freedoms to the entire world. First time a US president talked about what we think of now as human rights worldwide. Gina, you want to do the first one? Gina Pilara built the park, and so we're going to give her a moment here. Four freedoms, you got the first one.
Freedom of speech and expression.
Yeah, so glad I didn't have to remember that.
Anyone want to give me the second one? That's the third. I'm going to give that to you. Freedom
from what?
Freedom from fear. And will anyone give me freedom of expression and speech? You do, I'll do. Freedom of worship in any way you like. And we did an incredible documentary series with Aggie Gunn's group of students, 10th graders. And there was this incredible moment in the documentary, which is for sale later, where the 10th grader talks about to worship God in any way you'd like or not at all. And that was such a beautiful moment, and I think that really captures the spirit of this place. And I think Hans and Alina have brought an incredible piece. It was the first time I was hearing it today. I've been a little busy. And it's, I think, the most spectacular connection between art and the architecture in the last 10 years that I've been working here, so congratulations. Guess we all have a lot to live up to now, Hans and Alina. I will turn this over. Alina will do the introductions and has a lot to say.
Not a lot.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you, Howard.
Thank you, Howard. So, if anyone who's ever done any sort of art production, but particularly in New York in a public space, knows it takes a village. And in our case, it was an international village of people who came together to make Out of Silence a reality. So before we go on with the program, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge our key supporters and sponsors without whom this would not have been possible. So firstly, a big thank you to the Jane and Atos Erkko Foundation in Finland, the Ministry of Culture of Estonia, the Saastamoinen Foundation in Finland, the Swedish Cultural Fund in Finland, to Kati Laakso, the executive director of the Finnish Cultural Institute, who was instrumental in getting this project off the ground, and the exceptionally hardworking team, Claudio Fana-Draber, Mimosa, Elsa, and Eva Lee, to the head of cultural affairs and creative industries at the Consulate General of Finland in New York, Anssi Valius. A big thank you to you, to Annu, to Anni, to everyone who came together to help. And we are delighted to have here with us tonight both the ambassador, the outgoing consul general, Mr. Jarmo Sareva, and the incoming consul general, Ms. Mia Rantanen. Thank you both for your support. On the Estonian side, I have to start with the name of Janika Perna, who was really the original collaborator on this project, without whom this really would not have taken place. To Madeli's Parts, the cultural attaché, she's here somewhere. I know, she's right there. Marit Silave, and everyone at the Estonian Embassy. in Washington, D.C., the Estonian mission here in New York, to Arvo Pärt Center, and Michael Pärt, who's also here today, which is incredibly special for us to have you here. Vox Clamantis, the incredible Estonian choir who lent their beautiful voices to create the soundscape for Out of Silence. It was such an honor and a pleasure to work with them, and a huge thank you goes to the musical director of Vox Clamantis, Janek Tulve, who is here today.
Thank you.
All the way from Estonia. And of course to our exceptionally, I don't even know what the right words are, but the incredible hosts for Freedom's Park Conservancy. Howard, Katrina, Zoe before that, everyone who worked so hard to make this possible. Thank you so much for welcoming this project with open arms and for all of the incredible support you could give me and Hans throughout this intricate process of installing our vision here at the park. And last but certainly not least, I just want to say a personal thank you from me to Hans Rosenström for taking on this challenge, this mission that I approached you with 2 years ago. What you've created is far more beautiful than anything I could have ever imagined, and I am ecstatic that thousands of people in New York will get to experience and benefit from your work. So, and for now we continue with the program. So Nathaniel Kahn, our special guest here, and Hans Rosenström. Let's sit down and do this. Thank you all.
Well, I'll begin very briefly. This is about this beautiful work that you've done, so I'm going to ask you a couple questions, if I may, in a few moments, but I just wanted to say a couple of words. Thank you all for coming. This is an incredible experience to walk through these trees for me and to hear this otherworldly music, otherworldly sound. And towards the end of my father's life, he talked about these two ideas of silence and light. And he spoke about silence as being not very, very quiet, but the idea of silence was a feeling that you have when you're encountering something like the pyramids. It's an inner feeling, an inner silence that you feel. And light, he called the giver of presences. It is a light that's in the mind. It's not just sort of brightness, it's something also that you feel, but it's something that is also sort of numinous and out there. And he spoke about the crossing between silence and light as being the place of inspiration. It's where an idea comes from. It's where a feeling that you might want to make something comes from. And I must say that coming here today, I have been in many of my father's buildings, and I felt sort of the idea of silence and light, and this idea that architecture is somehow, his architecture is somehow this combination of silence and light. But I don't think I've ever heard what the meeting of silence and light is like until today. And you've given us that. And it's the most marvelous experience to walk amongst these trees and to feel these sounds that are of some kind of inner place, some kind of inner peace. It's not quiet, it's not silence, yet it is the feeling of silence, and it is the feeling that one has when one goes deeply inside oneself and has this sense of what one might feel standing in front of the pyramids, or here on this day with all of you. I wanted everybody to just disappear, because one wants to be alone somehow in these trees with these sounds. And yet we are, as you say at the end, made by each other. We find ourselves by being together. So I also felt, as I was walking through these trees, I have a little child, she's 2, and she said, the sound is pulling Dada forward. And the sound was pulling me forward through these trees. And I felt suddenly also the strength of what you've done is expressing something that my father and my mother, who designed the landscape here, wanted to achieve, which was the sense of a journey. That this is something which you leave the world behind. You come through these trees, and somehow through coming through them, you are able to enter an inner space, and you're able to prepare yourself for stepping into the inspiration that comes in the room. And what you've given us with these wonderful sounds which pull us forward is a sense of that journey, a sense of the journey that is life, and that is certainly the journey that every artist must take, going into silence and into aloneness and into some kind of place that also Arvo Pärt's music takes us to with such extreme precision and beauty, and I must say a kind of northern quality. So when I hear also silence and light, I feel in the word light a northern quality, a quality that one sees in Estonia and in Finland, this kind of searing light which pierces through the way Pärt's music pierces through you, and the way this music pierces through you at moments. It starts so silently, and then it sears you in your soul and pulls you forward, and it prepares you for this experience of the room. Finally, I want to say that it makes all these other sounds and all this other crap that's around us disappear. And what a marvelous achievement in New York City to have created a work of art that reminds us that what really matters is what is within. And then at the end, this gathering of people, that we together can do something wonderful. And it's certainly that guy there, that's what he believed. And what we greatly need in this world today is the peace that this music gives us, this sense of personal responsibility, this sense of journey, and ultimately this sense that together we can do something that we cannot do alone and that we must do now in the world. So I thank you both for creating such a beautiful work of art that belongs in this place. I only wish my father and my mother and Arvo Pärt also, who's with us still, could be here today. And I am joined by my sister here, who is also Louis Kahn's child, and I hope you feel that Lou would love this experience. I know that he would. I know that he would love what you've done. So, and kudos to Howard for your vision, truly, for bringing public art to this place. Public art to the city. This is free. You don't have to pay. You come and you experience something that no gallery can give you. This is a unique kind of art, public art. It's marvelous. So kudos to all of you. Beautiful, beautiful work. And I'll just ask you a couple questions, if I may. Tell us, part of public art that's so difficult is how the heck do you make it happen? Where did the idea come from, and how did you sort of manage to begin this incredible thing that we are now experiencing?
I'll try to give you a very concise version, although, as I mentioned at the beginning, there were a lot of people and a lot of things that happened along the way to make this possible. This all started about 2.5 years ago with my trip to Estonia. I was on a curatorial trip thanks to Vita Liberté and Olga Temnikova, and I started out as a musician. And so before I left Estonia, Olga said, you must visit the Arvo Pärt Center, which is located about an hour away from Tallinn. It's nestled in the forest by the Baltic Sea. And with my luggage, I went right before my flight and went to the Arvo Pärt Center. And the building is sort of nestled, as I said, inside the forest, and you have to walk through this pathway. And it's intentional by design that you walk through this pathway before the building appears. And it creates this incredible feeling, it slows you down and it really makes you present. And as the building appears, there is this incredible synergy between the rhythm of the forest, the rhythm of Arvo Pärt's music that you feel through the space and the space itself. And I've always actually wanted to be an architect myself, and I am really interested in this combination of sound and space and how the two interact and create and choreograph this experience for someone. And so when I got back to New York, I was so inspired, and as these things go, I ran into my friend Janika Perna, who I mentioned in my remarks, who was the representative of Estonian culture at the time in New York. And I expressed to her how much this experience, how it inspired me. And she said, why don't you put together a proposal of a contemporary art response to Arvo Pärt? Because we're planning this huge celebration in New York for his 90th birthday. And as she was saying this, we were actually standing on a rooftop not too far away in Long Island City, and she looked down and she pointed at the FDR for Freedom's Park, and she said, and this Louis designed space would be the perfect location. And then I went for a visit here, and of course when I arrived and I walked through the alleyways and I came to this space, and it really made perfect sense because there is so much overlap. I started doing research on Kahn and Arvo Pärt, and I realized how much overlap there is in their ideas, and how Arvo Pärt talks about music and how Louis Kahn spoke about architecture. And then, as these things sort of happened fortuitously, Hans Rosenström, whose work I fell in love with it about 10 years ago when I experienced it for the first time. And I've always wanted to find the perfect way, the perfect situation to work with him. He came to New York to do a residency at the International Studio and Curatorial Program, ISCP, and thanks to them, I got to do a studio visit with him. And during the studio visit, as he was explaining to me the ideas behind his work, I realized that a lot of the ideas in his contemporary art practice of how he uses sound as a material is also very similar to Arvo Pärt's ideas in music and Louis Kahn's ideas in architecture. And so I knew right then that he was the right man for the job. I didn't tell him right away. I told him later, but then for the last 2 years we've been thinking about this and conversing and ideating and went through multiple iterations before we arrived at this. But so that was the concise version. Thank you.
Wonderful. Hans, I want to ask you, in making something like this, when you first came here, what was it? Was there something that you felt when you were here, when you first visited? How did the place inspire the work that we are now experiencing?
I came here a couple of times, but I think once when the trees like the leaves had fallen down, and I could see like how light pierced through the trees and created this sort of shadow place on the ground, and how the shadows intermerged to it, like reached out for each other. And there's a lot of things that I've somehow connected also to the idea of voices and how voices reach out to others. And somehow it was very, very inspired. Like I was very, very much inspired. So it really started from like walking down this alleyway of trees.
Reminds me too, being in Estonia, there is a sense that, and people often speak about it in Estonia, that the trees speak, that the trees have voices.
Mm-hmm.
And as we're walking among the trees again with my child, the trees are speaking, the trees are singing. It's really such a marvelous thing that you felt when you first came here. Did you also feel this sense of the journey? Did you have a sense it began with, so you felt voices, but then also did you have a sense of movement? Because so much of what works in this architecture and in great architecture in general is movement through time.
Oh, definitely. But once the project kind of grew on me, I also was quite certain that I want to create a piece that's not stationary. That's something that encourages movement, something that's quite soft. Not always, but it starts very softly, which for me is kind of forces you also, if you want to listen to the piece, it forces you to have attention, to try to focus, to try to listen, to create a relationship with your surrounding. And therefore, once we developed the piece, and once I got the chance to work with Vox Clamantis, the choir, and with Jan-Erik Tulva, it was very important for me that it's not a sheet music. We're not hiring a composer to create something, but we're doing it together. We're attuning to each other. We try to feel like the singers are attuning to each other. They're listening to each other when they create this. And for me, it's very much about trying to create a moment of belonging, a moment of shared moment where we're together.
Explain just for a moment about that, because I don't know, people perhaps have read about it already, but if they haven't, you actually improvised. You wrote the words pretty soon before you recorded, I hear. You sort of like Bob Dylan, at the last moment you figured something great out.
But it took me a year, but it's still
okay. It all came out.
No, I'm not a writer either. I'm not a musician, I'm not a writer.
Right.
So words they're hard, they're tricky to find.
But you found the words, and so tell us a little bit about the process of bringing those words to the Arvo Pärt Center and working with this incredible group who have worked with Arvo Pärt for years and so there is a kind of a sense of tonality and a commonality between them, yet you're bringing something new, and you're asking them to improvise something using the intervals and the tintabulation which Pärt uses, but you're allowing them to find things as you went along. How did you do that? Talk about the process a little bit.
Well, it was a fantastic process because they are so incredibly talented. But so we basically sat down and we started like from the rhythms of the text or the rhythms of words, and from the idea of wind and whistling and growing things. And then in dialogue with Janek and with the singers, we just started to try things out. And we recorded 6 hours of material in the end. And I cut it down to 13 minutes.
Yeah.
There would have been a lot more I would love to share with you, but I had to,
But you-
limit somewhere.
You also had to figure out how you would send through 12 different channels, how you would build the show, if you will, or the experience in 12 different areas, so that you'll never see the same, never experience the same thing twice, right? So it's very. How did you work all these different channels? How did you work that?
Well, of course, I wanted it to grow in the alleyway, and I really love this idea that it starts the piece starts from a organic wind thing, and then it becomes more composed and rigid. But I could have done this in so many different ways that once in the process you start to make decisions and you think that you might go back and change them, but there's so many files, there's so much material that often the decisions that you're kind of stuck with them, and then you go forward. So I knew how I want people to move in the park, though there's no right or wrong way, but in my mind how I felt that people would interact with it, and I try to guide people a little bit, but it's very subtle. So it's by process, and this is what came out of it, but it could have maybe something else could have come out as well.
Well, I want to talk to you about one sort of final thing, and I want people to be able to experience it because we have to leave at 7, and I want to make sure that people experience the work. That's the main thing. But I would like to ask you one sort of last thing, which has to do with this work. To me, great art has tension in it, has a kind of something which is uneasy in it, something which is not resolved in it. To me, part of what's not resolved in this, in a wonderful way, is the tension between private and public. That this music. These sounds take you into a very private place, yet we are in a public place. And I wanted to know, were you thinking about that, and does that resonate with you at all?
I was thinking about it a lot, of course. It is definitely something that fascinates me, and something that you can do with sound and working with voices and song in particular. That song resonates often, that you have an emotional register when you listen to a song. And to bring that to a public space, I think there's a lot of possibilities. It can really activate people in ways that I don't even exactly know how people will what they will get out of it. So for me, the most important thing is the individual's own encounter and their own presence in that moment of experience, and that's controlled by light, by the time of day, by wind, all these things. The soundscape is one part of it. And it's of course the kind of guiding. Guiding
us along. And at the end, you give us, what are the words that you end with? What are if you listen to, and I urge all of you to listen. What are your final words that resonate between the two LAs?
They sing, "We are formed by one another." Then there's some parts also from FDR's speech. Also, but we are formed by one another. So basically saying that we make the world together, and we make each other's lives.
There could be nothing more beautiful to end with than that. So thank you all for coming.
I do want to end by saying thank you, Alina, for bringing me on this journey. Without you, nothing would have happened, and it's been incredible. Of course, thank you, Janek, and Vox Clamantis as well, and the Four Freedoms Conservancy. And thank you, all of you who actually came here to this park today. It's beautiful. It's a bit overwhelming, to be honest.
feel like you can really start from the other side.
Yeah.